The opioid epidemic is very, very real, and it's affecting our communities and all communities alike. A lot of those cases are really preventable. Very often people look at those that are struggling as if like they're someone who's bad. And it's not true. It's people that are sick. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be an addict.
Beruchim Abayim and welcome to Torah Talks Chazaq's Tuesday night program with special guests. We have with us my dear friend Rabbi Zvi Gluck. Baruch haba, shalom aleichem. How are you doing?
Aleichem shalom. Thank you for having me.
All the way from Queens.
It was a very, very far trip.
Baruch Hashem, and it's a big honor to have you here. And thank you for all that you do for Klal Yisrael. But before we get to your background, tonight's topic will be being real, and it's right around the corner from Rosh Hashanah. But before we do being real, if you could give us a little background about yourself and the great work you're involved with.
So I live in Queens. I've been here for the last 23 years. I was involved in various different communal things locally. I'm a volunteer on Hatzalah. I've been involved with other government agencies and on committees. I think we sit together on a few different
stuff,
communal stuff. But as far as the organization, as you know, it's called Amudim. We've done lots of things together in the past, but
great
I guess
work.
for the public to know, is an organization dedicated to helping those that are struggling with addiction, those that are suffering from mental illness, and those that were victims of child and sexual abuse. And we try to do our part to help give people a good chance to be able to lead a healthy and productive life, whether it's helping the individual, their family, or their communities at large. And Baruch Hashem, we, it's always a toss-up. How do you describe what we're doing? Is it good? Is it not good? If there's too many people coming for help, does that mean it's bad? So Rav Brudny, who is the Rav of Amudim, said it very well. He says, it doesn't mean that more people have tsaras, that more people have problems. It means that more people are feeling comfortable to reach out for help. And the truth is, the last few years since COVID, we've seen that mental health has become much easier to talk about. Other areas that we deal with are still heavily stigmatized, but at the very least, people are finally starting to connect with their inner selves and try to get the proper help that they need. So
amazing. I know firsthand the great work of Amudim. And like you mentioned, up until Amudim came up, many of the topics and the things that you deal with were stuffed under the rugs. And people weren't being real. And you guys stepped up and you made a whole, PR and marketing, got the word on Gedolim, Rabbanim, and Mechanchim, and psychologists, and made it into a whole big deal. And Baruch Hashem, Chaz Hashem, it's people aren't as worried today to step up and be real with themselves and say, yes, I have this addiction, I have this problem. If you could touch upon an issue that unfortunately is very, very big, is the opioid crisis with the drugs and the overdoses, what Amudim does. And
so unfortunately, the opioid epidemic is very, very real. And it's affecting our communities and all communities alike. I will say this, just before COVID, we were noticing a downturn of opioids. It was getting somewhat better, and then it just came right back up, and it hit with a fury. The number one issue is too late. It's a day late and $1 short, which is the people are dying. They die, it's over. And very often, a lot of those cases are really preventable. People are dying because the drugs are laced. People are, drug dealers, and people that are creating the drugs are not really your finest people. They don't have the quality assurance, that people are used to. So they're lacing it with fentanyl in order to get people to want to use more drugs for a better high, and it ends up killing people. We've actually had, not too long ago, people were dying that were smoking marijuana because it was being laced with fentanyl and they had no idea. But on the other side is when people that are struggling with the addiction. So very often people look at those that are struggling as if like they're someone who's bad. And it's not true. It's people that are sick. I've said this before. I think we've spoken about this together once. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be an addict.
Right. It's a gradual process. It starts small and it just grows and grows.
Right. And very often during that process, people might actually notice something, but they won't say anything. And I say, if this is a friend is someone who's going to help, not someone who's going to keep their secret. But very often people see it, and people need to feel more comfortable to say, hey, buddy, you got to get help, or reach out to somebody or do something. But then once somebody is in that matzav, they're in that situation, they're having a problem, and I have this, and it breaks my heart when we like reach out to people, so needs help, and they're like, well, he got himself into that mess, why should I be involved? And it's really not true. We have to look at it as people that are struggling with addictions, they're sick, and they do need help. And it's something that very often, I mean, I say this, and I'm get into trouble when I say this, but I say it anyway. Our school system is very much at fault because they do not provide proper education. The assumption of, well, our students are never going to end up doing this, so we don't need to create something, is the most ridiculous statement in the world.
Education is probably the biggest prevention that there is.
I think it's the only real prevention. It's education, and there's the famous expression they say is, what's the opposite of addiction? Connection.
Being connected.
It's not just the education, but it's also feeling comfortable. We do these events in some of the schools, some of the more open schools, where it's like an evening with the parents and the students. And one of the main ideas behind that evening is the students are sitting next to their mother and father, talking about drugs, alcohol, addiction. It opens up that topic that it can be spoken about with a parent. Very often when people have a problem, especially with dealing with teenagers, they're scared to go to their parents. They don't know what the reaction is going to be. Very often the parents don't know how to react. And then the schools say this is a family issue. The families are like, 1 second, my kid's in school 8 hours a day, most of his waking days. When we talk about a partnership, right, in raising kids, the schools are just as much a partner as the parents and really need to take a much more leading approach to appropriate. Now, I understand cultural sensitivities, but there still has to be appropriate education and awareness. Before Purim, they always do these events, pictures, don't drink, don't get carried away. I always tell people, that's my least of my worries. I'm worried about the other 364 days of the year. But for that, they're able to talk about it. It's something that, it is preventable with proper education. Early detection is extremely important. And then getting people the proper help once they do fall into that, thing. And all these things together have to really be tackled as one.
So the fact that, with what I understand, in New York, it's being legalized right now. They have marijuana and all these smoke shops and things along the line. Does that make things better? Does it make things worse?
So the theory behind is similar to, we talk about prohibition. That was the time when alcohol was illegal, and then it got repealed. What a lot of people fail to realize is the main reason why it got repealed was because of all the crime, the criminal activity going around with bootlegging. People were getting killed. It was just horrendous. So the country needed to do something. Marijuana getting legalized was very much, in the early stages, was very much in that same theory. But the reality is it's not true. If you actually go to certain areas, Colorado, they just did a study. I think their car accidents, death caused by car accidents has actually, the last study I saw from their Department of Transportation from Colorado was being high on marijuana versus drunk driving. Drunk driving used to be number one, now it's marijuana. So car accidents went up. Criminal activity near the areas where people could buy went up. And the concept of, well, if it's in a smoke shop, then it's going to be safer and healthier. But again, people that create drugs are looking to make a living any way they can. They're not your finest people. They're the ones that are on the streets. So just because you could get something, in a store doesn't mean that's where they're going to go. And even if it is in the store, alcohol is legal. But nobody's going to get up and say alcohol is good. It's legal, right? But doesn't make it good. How many people do we know that are dealing with alcoholism? How many, the numbers of alcoholism within our community are not only increasing, they're increasing by the mothers in our community, 30s, 40s, 50-year-olds. So just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's good. And the fact that marijuana is being legalized, but that's another perfect example. We're not going to stop that. So what do? Do we ignore it? Or do we try to educate the next generation of what the dangers could be? They asked me this question a few years ago when this organization TAG does the filters on the phones.
For the phones, yeah.
So
we push them all the time.
Right. So somebody asked me if I would get involved and combine with what we do. And I asked one simple question. When you go into an 8th grade or a 9th grade, and they're getting their filters put on, are you explaining to them why? Are they being taught what the dangers are of an unfiltered phone? Because a lot of people assume the dangers are from religious reasons, from, inappropriate technologies, inappropriate images. But the real number one issue that we see is people meeting people that they don't know who they are. So abusers are able to make believe they're something they're not, different age, different gender, whatever it might be. People getting addicted to games, online gaming.
Yeah.
So
that's
again,
also legal.
Again, but we're not even talking. I'm not even up to gambling. No, that's next. I'm talking about just games. Whether it was Fortnite or whatever those games are. So you have these teenagers. They're showing up in school half asleep because they're up all night
playing games.
But again, even in the games, you're playing with other people. You don't know if that person's really who they say they are. And a lot of them are using their voices. But come on, today's day and age, you could masquerade your voice to be something else. So there's of course, the other stuff is also dangerous. Gambling has been on the rise. By the way, I want to tell you, the bulk of the gambling that we're dealing with on a regular basis are those that are barely making ends meet and taking whatever money they have and buying scratch-off lottery tickets, hoping that they'll hit that big one. So again, when I said that, they're like, no, in this school, whatever, I said, then I'm not going to help you, because the idea is to empower people to understand.
People, that's the word.
People talk about marijuana. Yeah, it messes up with the brain waves, brain cells, development, right? Those are real things. We could talk about the science behind it. We could talk about the actual human growth development. There's so much. Instead of just saying everything is bad, when we talk about everything is bad, what do? People want to do it. If it's bad, I got to try it. So these are real issues, but and again, I want to say this. We're definitely a lot more further ahead than we were.
We're more open about it. People understand it better.
But we still have a long way to go. I got to tell you, just yesterday, somebody was showing me an article from a few weeks ago. I didn't see it because it was like some sort of internal newsletter or something. But it was a teacher, and it was a very public. It was internal newsletter, but in the world of education. And this was somebody that actually was sharing their story about the abuse they endured when they were younger. That would have never happened 5 years ago. So we're definitely getting into a better place, but we still have a long way to go.
So what is, I guess for lack of better words, the average person listening to this? And they're thinking, oh my gosh, such a dark picture. There's so many issues. There's so many problems. What can an individual, let's say a parent or an individual, any person, Joe or Shmo, whatever it is, could do about to make life better or help others?
So let me first preface by saying we live in a beautiful community.
Oh.
The community that we live in, the good deeds, the organizations, the things we do to help one another.
It's unreal. It's unreal. All these
Chazaq.
amazing. I'm biased.
I'm saying, but
Amudim.
we need to remember that the stuff that we deal with, while it's dark, it's
dark.
not the norm. That means I'm not sitting here to say, let's raise the alarm because the entire community is struggling with this. Now, one is one too many. And that's what we have to remember. But we also have to keep in mind, it's not all gloom. It's not all horrendous. We have to remember that we're part of something beautiful. But part of being in something beautiful means also recognizing when there's a problem to be able to make sure people can get the help that they need. So we talk about addiction issues. It doesn't matter whether it's addiction, whether it's abuse, whether it's mental health. It doesn't matter. If people would feel comfortable to ask for help themselves, if we can help remove that stigma, so that would be like a huge win. Somebody to be able to come up and say, I need help. This is what's happening. Very often people are scared to, so we have to tell people, listen, be a friend. Don't be judgmental. Don't be an expert. Be a friend. You see somebody struggling, go over. Hey, buddy, what's going on? Can we talk? Anything I could do to help you? And if you see that the person is really struggling and is not looking for help, I hate that comment of, well, we can only help someone who wants to help themselves. They don't know they want to help themselves. A person that's having a massive heart attack, right? They don't know they're having a heart attack. Now, if you say to them, do you want me to help you because of the heart attack? They may not answer, right? But they want it, but they want the help. Being a friend is helping. So if someone sees that someone else is struggling, reach out. Reach out to a professional, reach out to an expert, reach out to, if it's in a school, there's always got to be that one teacher or rabbi that everybody likes, that people feel comfortable with, we could say anything to. reach out. That's once somebody sees that there's something going on. From the parent side of it, again, we're first talking about the problem that already exists. I don't know anybody that ever quit smoking because somebody walked up to them on the street and said, hey, that's bad for you.
That doesn't work.
I don't think it's ever worked. I don't think so.
Honey works better than vinegar.
Exactly. So when a parent sees that they have a child that's struggling, support the child. Be there. Show them love. I'm not saying that a parent has to agree with what they're doing. I'm not telling a parent, no matter what your kid does, No, but at the end of the day, be there. I'm here for you. Let's get through this together. On the preventative side, it's really about open communication. And you know what? It starts at home, that I will say. How many times people go into their houses, they're on their cell phone as they're walking through their front door? What does that say to the kids? What does that say to your wife? What are you teaching the next generation? Again, how many times are people sitting down having dinner together? Their phone rings, they're texting. How many times people just put their phone down and say to their kids, let's just spend some time together? Play a board game, talk about something. I'm not talking homework. I'm not talking the stuff that you have to do. And not just on Shabbos when anyway you can't do something else because then it's like, oh, I can't. No, show your children, show your spouse the importance of relationship, of communication, of being together. At the end of the day, whenever somebody feels that they have that, they're more comfortable to reach out to that person for something.
Amazing, 100%. One of the stigmas, I guess, is that many families that need help, they always say, what if, people realize or people hear and shidduchim, getting my kids married.
That's the dirtiest word in the Jewish language, the S word. That is the dirtiest word.
I get it all the time. So what's the right approach towards such individuals that say, because of this issue with one child, I have another, X amount of children. So what's going to be?
I'm going to tell you something that we looked into many, many years ago. And then we again looked into it again about 2 years ago, right towards the end of COVID. The old method, when a parent was told that they had a child born with special needs or developmentally disabled, talking 40 years ago.
They would hide him.
Exactly. That child was left in the hospital, sent to a group home. Why? It'll affect shidduchim. Right? Let's just look at this, step by step. Today, you have all these beautiful organizations helping special needs kids, keeping them in the house, part of the family, right? So
yep, it's
obviously,
it's unbelievable.
That stigma was able to be broken and changed, right?
Amazing.
Okay. 20 years ago, you couldn't say the word cancer. The person has the machla, the illness, the this. And if somebody had it, nobody spoke about it. Today, again, we can talk about it.
All these organizations
helping, it's amazing, okay? Organizations dealing with single parenting, divorces.
Mikam Chayisrael.
Exactly. Unbelievable.
Yep. We
have to be able to get past where we're at and say the same thing here. But it's also interesting. There's the question of shidduchim, but there's also, I don't want to ruin the other kids in the house, like you just said before. Parents that throw a kid out of the house, we did a study with 200 families. In more than 75% of those that threw kids out of the house had at least one other child, if not two other children, follow the path of the child that was thrown out.
How does it make sense? He's out of the house.
So obviously the out of the house doesn't work. Let's establish that first.
Right.
I'll explain how it makes sense in a second. But on the ones that kept the kids in the house, there was a minutia that had another child that followed that path.
Very interesting study. Wow.
We looked at it from a very different angle. The kids feel love. If a child sees, my parents are not happy with my brother, but they love him. He's in the house. He's part of the family. They tolerate it. They're trying to help him. I feel the love too. But when a parent throws that kid out of the house, the message the other kids are hearing is, you better toe the line or you're going to be like them. That means you don't love me. You love yourself.
Wow.
You love your reputation in the community. You're worried about people think of you. It's not about me. If it's not about me, what do I care? And that's what people need to realize. So it doesn't matter. Because I can tell you, some of the families with the most difficult of situations did the most amazing matches for their kids. And then you have these other families that everybody looks at and goes, wow, these people are so great, and you deal with issues and you see what's going on. So the reality is that it's a false narrative. They say the word of fear, right, is false expectations appearing real. That's what this is. It's fear. Now, sometimes it's fear because people of they're worried about their own ego, their own respect, their own standing in the community.
False
expectations
appearing real. Fear.
We assume the worst of things, right? Doesn't happen.
Powerful. Very, very powerful. You mentioned before about Rav Elia Bruni Shlita, who's the Das Torah of Amudim. You must get crazy amount of cases that are, I guess, for lack of a better word, like borderline. Like, what do you do in such situations? And the Gedolim are always there. Baruch Hashem, same over here with all the Gedolim that guide us and, hold our hands with regards to shailas and questions. Now, where does the Torah come with regards to the work of Amudim? Of course, the Torah has many discussions about these topics, but if you could shed some light on a Torah perspective.
So, the answer is we have to look at it from a few different perspectives. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to say a cute story that happened where Shimon and Levi destroyed an entire city. Right? Why did they destroy the city? Because their sister was taken advantage of, was abused. There's no other word to describe what was done to their sister. Right?
That's right, 100%.
This is what it was. So first of all,
abuse is in the Torah.
We know that the Torah talks about abuse. Now, we also know that Yom Kippur, right, which is coming up now.
That's right.
Yom Kippur. What is the last Torah portion that is read before Ne'ilah, before the climax of Yom Kippur? What do we read in the Torah?
About Erva and all that stuff.
About all the illicit and inappropriate relationships. I don't understand. This is the time that we're going up and we're saying, God, open the gates, right? This is Ne'ilah. We're coming in. Come on, work with us. The last thing we're reading from the book is these things? Shouldn't we be reading about Moshe coming down the mountain? Right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be reading about building the Mishkan? This is what we're learning. I don't understand it.
Great question.
Torah is teaching us a very valuable lesson, in my opinion. On that, we'll get to the other part in a second, but on that part, what's the Torah teaching us? We're all human.
People make mistakes.
You could be at the highest point, and you could do the lowest thing. It doesn't change. We're human. We're about to take ourselves and say, this is the end of this day. We're getting signed, sealed, and delivered. But we still understand these are traps that we could fall into, and we need to do what we can not to get there. So that's the first piece. Going back to Shimon and Levi, so there was a very cute situation. Shimon and Levi weren't punished at that point. Right? They should have been. They shouldn't have been. The Torah was upset.
They were rebuked a little bit later when Yaakov was passing away.
What happened later when they were rebuked? What was the cause of that? What happened to their brother Yosef? So what's going on here? They destroy an entire city. They don't get it over the head, right? They do something to their one brother, all of a sudden. Now, so I heard a very, very interesting answer. When they destroyed Shechem, when they were representing their sister, even if they did something wrong, right? But they were doing it for the right reason. The right reason is, I gotta protect my brother, my sister, my family. But when it came to their brother, all of a sudden, wait, 1 second. Are you about right or wrong, or are you about an agenda? With your sister, you had an agenda. With your brother, your agenda was the other way. If you're based on an agenda, it ain't gonna work. And that's where you gotta wake up. We deal with some of the most difficult issues in the world. But the goal is to help people heal. The goal is to educate people, to create preventative programs, to do everything that needs to be done to curb this issue and give people a healthy lease on life. Can't have an agenda.
No agendas.
We just finished, reading in the Torah portion, it's Avim and Vayelech, right?
Right.
So there was always something I found very interesting about this week. Klal Yisrael was one. United as one. Right? We were all together. That's it. I don't understand. This is something so vital to us, right? whether you're religious, not religious, Hasidic, not Hasidic, Sephardi, Ashkenaz, Bukharian, Israeli, Russian, Mexican, doesn't matter. We're all one.
Am Yisrael.
We all are one. We all bleed red. We all, everything. And all are one is all inclusive. But we've yet created this world where people still feel that they're different. They're better than someone else. We have to remember, no. We have to go back. We're entering Rosh Hashanah, right? This is the beginning of the new year, and people always tease about, Yom Kippur, right? The Meirov at the end of Yom Kippur, we already say, Salach Lana, right? We say, God forgive us. I don't know, you just finished a whole day of everything. Why? Because the joke is that, you daven Meirov so fast so you can go eat, you're saying it for that. But the point is, we're all human. But we're always so busy worrying about everybody else, judging other people. This one's not good. This one's not good. This rabbi is wrong. This school is... I don't understand. Why can't we just all be one? We should learn from this week's portion. If we're all one, then the same way I would do anything. If I felt that I was in danger of something, I would want to help myself. If we're all one, we got to do the same for our brothers and sisters.
100%.
And that's really what it is. And I think that at the end of the day, people being there for one another, people showing that they care. I see this with you and your brother and all the amazing people at Chazaq. When we first started doing things together, it was an event here and there. Now it's a world apart from what we were, and it's beautiful. But it's remembering that we're here for each individual. We're not here to show how important we are. Each individual is a person. We always say, in Amudim, when you build a person, you change them, you change their families, you change their community, you get the trajectory of the entire world. I got a voicemail, WhatsApp voice note, which I happen to not like because they just get annoying in the middle.
But there's times too.
But every once in a while, you got to hear that, And the WhatsApp was somebody saying, I want to just say that a few years ago, I sent someone to Amudim for help, and it was a really bad space, and she's getting engaged now, and the wedding is going to be in about 2-3 months, and I just want you to know that the thank you is not just for the person, but the generations that are being helped. Now, I'm proud of that, but I would rather not have to have that at all. I'd rather be able to not have to deal with this. Have people find things earlier on, make a healthier society. But I think if we all keep working together and doing what we do, then, with the help...
The world will be a better place. And Geula, redemption, that's the goal. Mitzvah Hashem Yisbarach with Hashem's help. Rabbi Zvi, if you have a final message for all of Klal Yisrael, a takeaway?
I'm not sure if I can give a message to Klal Yisrael, but I'll give a message to myself, and we'll see if it helps anybody else. We all have to look in the mirror. We all have to see things through our own lenses first. We say that, treat others the way you want to be treated. It's machlekes, whether it's a Jewish and not a Jewish statement, the with the other one. Okay, either way, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about the baby steps.
Taking it one step at a
time. Think of something, and I say this to myself, think of something that can make me a better person. What can I do to make me a better person? It doesn't matter what it is, something small. At the end of the day, the world is big. The world is scary. But nobody can tackle everything. But if we can take one thing, whatever that is, to make ourselves better, that makes those around us better. And let's all work together towards that, because at the end of the day, that's all we have.
Powerful. Amazing. 100% Rabbi Zvi Gluck. Thank you very much for all that you do for Klal Yisrael, for the Jewish people. Rabbi Chazaq, we really appreciate it. Yag the Torah. We should continue only doing good and do so much good that the Geula comes, so we don't have to do all the things that we're doing. So, Mitzvah Shem, more information about Amudim is online, amudim.org. Amudim.org. We encourage everyone to check it out. If you have a family, a friend, a neighbor that might need help, they do amazing work. We know firsthand. And we want to remind everyone, every single Tuesday night, Chazaq Torah Talks with special guests, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Baruch Hashem, the feedback has been amazing. We appreciate all the feedback. Send it over to info@chazaq.org, CHAZAQ. torahq.org. Suggestions for future Torah Talk guests are always welcome. Special thank you to the entire Chazaq team, Natan and Rabbi and Natan and Izzy and Meir and the whole amazing staff and all the supporters and board members and volunteers. We really appreciate it. Shout out to all the platforms, so many platforms that host our Torah Talks podcast, with a special shout out to Torah Anytime, dailygiving.org. $1 a day goes a very far way.
Big fan.
Huge fan.
Daily giving. I want you to know. People,
amazing.
People that I know, I'm sorry, I know you're closing up, but I got to say this. There are people that I know that say to me, I would love to give money to Amudim, but I don't have enough. But I give daily giving, know. And I said, you know what? You're helping. You're helping everybody. And it's such a beautiful thing
it's unbelievable.
To see this. And by the way, the feeling is very good also when we get those checks. They're nice checks.
It's very nice. It's very nice.
Listen,
nice we're on the same page.
We get nice checks.
Amudim, many other great causes and organizations. Dr. Didonath, unbelievable revolution he created just a few years ago. I didn't think it would make it. But
by the way, nobody did. No, I'm saying I did it. I thought, because we all, how many times did we speak about we should do a monthly giving and this giving?
Never worked.
It worked because that's all it is.
Show. It's everyone together.
But that's also all it is. By the way, it's a perfect example.
Of the small.
Perfect example.
100%. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So thank you very much for daily giving. And Mitzvah Hashem, we should all see each other. Only smachot and happy occasion. You got it.
Thank you.